Welcome and thank you for being here. My presentation is titled From Stuck to Self-Motivated: Psychology-Based Strategies to Transform Motivation. This presentation brings together two real experiences I've had supporting coworkers who were struggling with motivation for very different reasons. One of these situations happened during a previous period when I worked as a team leader in a customer care department where I worked closely with a coworker named James. The other happened during this semester when I assisted a coworker who I'll refer to as Kay. Kay was feeling overwhelmed by her workplace technology training. Although these cases occurred in different contexts, they connect powerfully through two motivational theories: causal attribution theory, which explains how people interpret causes of success and failure, and goal orientation theory, which explains whether people are driven by learning or by avoiding failure. Both coworkers were capable, but each held beliefs that limited their motivation. Through these theories, I was able to understand their challenges and more clearly design strategies that helped them shift towards healthier, more productive mindsets. As Dweck's work reminds us, effort becomes empowering when the goal is growth, not perfection, and that idea guided my work with both individuals. So let's get into it. Why does motivation break down? Motivation rarely breaks down because someone is lazy or incapable. More often, it breaks down because of the meaning people attach to their experiences. As Weiner explains, the ways individuals explain success and failure powerfully shape their emotions, effort, and future behavior. In my first case study, Kay attributed her struggles with technology to fixed personal flaws. She believed she lacked the ability and could not improve. These internal, stable, and uncontrollable attributions led directly to lowered motivation and increased anxiety, which is consistent with Weiner's attribution framework. In my second case study, James avoided new tasks and feedback he feared appearing incompetent. Research on goal orientation theory shows that individuals with performance avoidance orientations engage minimally to protect their self-image. In both cases, the problem wasn't the ability, it was the beliefs about the ability, the effort, and the failure. That's why understanding these motivational theories is essential when working to rebuild confidence and engagement. Now that we've looked at why motivation often breaks down, I want to introduce the two motivational theories that guided my interventions with both individuals I worked with. The first theory is causal attribution theory, developed by Bernard Weiner. Weiner explains that how people interpret success and failure dramatically impacts their emotions, their effort, and ultimately their likelihood to try again. In my case study with Kay, she consistently attributed her technology difficulties to internal, stable, and uncontrollable causes, like "I'm just not good at this" or "I'll never get it." Because her explanations focused on permanent lack of ability, her motivation dropped, her anxiety increased, and she stopped attempting tasks altogether. This type of attribution pattern is strongly associated with learned helplessness, which we can clearly see in her behavior. The second theory is goal orientation theory, described by Ames and expanded by Dweck. This theory examines why individuals pursue goals, whether they want to improve their understanding and skills, which we call mastery goals, or whether they want to protect how they are perceived by others, which we call performance goals. My participant James consistently demonstrated a performance avoidance orientation. He wasn't trying to succeed, he was trying not to look incompetent. Because of this, he avoided feedback, avoided challenging tasks, and engaged at the minimum level necessary to avoid failure. So, although Kay and James were experiencing different motivational issues, both theories helped us understand the deeper psychological benefits driving their behaviors. These frameworks guided not just my interpretation, but also the interventions I designed to help each one of them move toward healthier, more productive motivation patterns. Our first case study focuses on Kay. an adult learner in a workplace setting who struggled significantly with new technology. What stood out immediately was that her difficulties weren't based on skill alone, they were based on how she understood her failures. According to causal attribution theory, these explanations people create for success and failure shape their emotions, their expectations, and ultimately their motivation. Weiner explains that attributions fall along three dimensions: internal or external, stable or unstable, and controllable or uncontrollable. Kay consistently interpreted her struggles using internal, stable, and uncontrollable attributions. She would say things like, "I'm just not good at it," or "I'll never understand technology." These statements show that she believed the causes of her difficulty was rooted inside herself, and it wasn't going to change, and it was outside of her control. This pattern of thinking had predictable motivational consequences. Because she saw the cause as permanent and uncontrollable, she began to withdraw. Instead of asking questions or trying again, she became anxious, avoided tasks altogether. Her attributions didn't just describe her feelings, they created them and they shaped her overall behavior. Understanding Kay's attribution pattern was essential because it explained why encouragement didn't work alone. Because we could build her technical confidence, we had to shift how she interpreted her struggles. That theory to practice connection set the foundation for the intervention I designed. Once I understood Kay's attribution pattern, the goal became helping her reframe how she interpreted her difficulties. According to Weiner's attribution theory, motivation improves when individuals see challenges as unstable and controllable, meaning they can change with effort, strategy, or support. The first step was simply helping Kay identify the negative self belief she repeated to herself: "I'm not a tech person," or "I always mess this up." Each of these reflected internal, stable, uncontrollable attributions. To shift those patterns, I emphasized alternative explanations that were unstable and controllable. For example, instead of "I can't do this," we practice replacing it with "I'm still learning this," or "I need more guided steps." I used to think scaffolding, breaking down tasks, modeling processes, and allowing to complete manageable parts independently. Every time she successfully completed a small step, we took a moment to acknowledge that success and connect it back to her effort or strategy, not her identity. Through this process, Kay slowly built her confidence. Her willingness to complete tasks improved, her anxiety decreased, and she became more open to practicing new skills. Her shift in attributions, from fixed barriers to improvable skills, was the foundation of her motivational improvement. Our second case study focuses on James, another adult learner in a workplace environment. James was capable and intelligent, but he consistently avoided tasks that required initiative. He often stayed quiet during group work, hesitated to ask questions, and resisted feedback that could have helped him improve. To understand his behavior, I use goal orientation theory, which looks at why people pursue certain tasks. According to Ames and Dweck, some individuals adopt mastery goals, which focus on learning and improvement, while others adopt performance goals, which focus on how they appear to others. James consistently demonstrated a performance avoidance orientation. His main goal wasn't growth, it was protecting himself from looking incompetent. Because of this, he minimized effort, avoided challenging tasks, and only participated when he felt absolutely certain he was not going to fail. This type of orientation directly impacts motivation. When the main goal is to avoid mistakes, people often hold back. They do the minimum and miss opportunities to build confidence. This was exactly what I observed with James. He wasn't unmotivated, he was afraid of the consequences of trying. Understanding goal orientation allowed me to identify what kind of support he needed. Before working on skills, we had to address the underlying fear that was driving his avoidance and help him shift toward a more mastery focused approach. Understanding that James operated with a strong performance avoidance orientation helped me design an intervention that focused on shifting his goal from protecting his image to developing his skills. According to goal orientation, individuals become more motivated when they adopt mastery goals, which emphasize growth, effort, and improvement. The first step was to address James' fear of judgment. Through one on one conversations, we talked about what made certain tasks feel threatening and why feedback felt uncomfortable. This helped normalize the fear and created a supportive space for him to open up. Next, we set mastery focused goals rather than performance based ones. Instead of saying, complete this task without mistakes, we reframed goals as practice using this strategy or improve understanding by 10%. This reduced the pressure he felt and made tasks more achievable. I also used modeling and guided practice, walking him through tasks step by step before giving him opportunities to try them independently. Pairing him with a confident peer model helped too. He could observe effective strategies without feeling spotlighted. Finally, we used short reflections at the end of each session, focusing on effort, strategy, and progress. This aligned with the research showing that reflecting on growth reinforces mastery goals. Over time, James became more willing to attempt challenging tasks and participate in his group work. His confidence improved, and he started taking small, productive risks, which are strong indicators of a shift towards mastery orientation. Even though Kay and James struggled for different theoretical reasons, their experiences reveal several important similarities about motivation. Both individuals were capable, but both held beliefs that limited their willingness to try. For Kay, that barrier was attribution. She believed her failures were a reflection of her permanent lack of ability. For James, the barrier was a goal orientation. He feared looking incompetent and engaged only enough to avoid failure. In both cases, fear played a central role. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, and fear of confirming negative self-beliefs led to avoidance behaviors. These patterns are consistent with both Weiner's attribution theory, which explains how internal, stable, and uncontrollable beliefs reduce effort, and goal orientation theory, which shows how performance avoidance goals decrease engagement and confidence. Another similarity is that both individuals experience a significant drop in confidence. Whether due to negative attributions or performance avoidance goals, low confidence often leads exactly to the same behaviors: hesitation, silence, withdrawal, and minimal effort. Finally, both Kay and James improved with their underlying beliefs. Kay benefited from reframing her attributions and recognized what was controllable. James benefited from shifting towards mastery-oriented goals that emphasize growth instead of performance. In both cases, motivation increased when the focus shifted from fear to learning. This comparison illustrates a key point. Even when the source of demotivation differ, the solutions often begin with reshaping beliefs and supporting individuals in developing healthier, more adaptive mindsets. Working with both Kay and James taught me several important lessons about motivation and the role that beliefs play in learning and performance. One of the biggest takeaways was that behavior is often shaped more by internal beliefs than by actual ability. Both individuals were capable, but their thinking patterns created barriers that prevented them from engaging fully. I also learned that fear plays a major role in demotivation. For Kay, the fear came from her believing her failures defined her ability, an attribution pattern described by Weiner. For James, the fear was social, a fear of looking incompetent, which aligns with performance avoidance goals described by Ames and Dweck. Even though the fears were different, both resulted in avoidance, low confidence, and frustration. Another important takeaway is that theory matters. Causal attribution theory helped me understand Kay's reactions and design that strategy that shifted her explanation towards controllable causes. Goal orientation theory helped me understand James's avoidance and helped me create mastery-focused goals that encourage growth. But perhaps the most important lesson was that targeted interventions truly work. When Kay learned to view her challenges as challengeable, her confidence grew. When James began focusing on learning instead of his performance, his engagement increased. These cases showed me that motivation can be rebuilt when we address the underlying beliefs and shift the focus to growth, effort, and small successes. These insights will shape how I support learners in the future, not just by teaching skills, but by understanding and reshaping the beliefs that drive motivation. One of the biggest benefits of studying both causal attribution theory and goal orientation theory is that the strategies drawn from them can be applied in any learning environment, whether it's a classroom, a workplace, or a coaching situation. The first strategy is to always help learners reframe negative self talk. When individuals describe failures as permanent or uncontrollable, motivation drops. As Weiner explains, shifting attributions towards unstable and controllable causes, like effort, strategy, or practice, helps learners feel more capable and willing to try. Second, it is essential to emphasize effort, strategies, and progress, not just perfection. This aligns with Dweck's and Ames' work showing that mastery-oriented feedback reduces anxiety and increases engagement. Third, people need psychological safety. James improved only when he felt safe making mistakes. Creating environments where errors are seen as part of learning increases willingness and to participate and experiment. Fourth, using mastery-oriented goals helps learner focus on growth instead of evaluation. When we set goals that emphasize improvement, learners feel less pressure and more curiosity. Finally, celebrating small wins is incredibly powerful. Both Kay and James grew motivated when small successes were acknowledged and connected to their effort. These moments helped build confidence and reshape their beliefs about themselves. These strategies demonstrate that motivation isn't fixed. With intentional support, learners can shift from avoidance towards growth, confidence, and resilience. As we reach the end of this presentation, one message stands out clearly. Motivation begins and ends with belief. Kay and James were two very different learners, facing different challenges, but both struggled because of the way they understood their own abilities. Causal attribution theory helped explain Kay's belief that her difficulties were permanent and uncontrollable, while goal orientation theory helped explain James' fear of judgment and avoidance of challenge. These theories gave me the framework I needed to understand their behaviors, but more importantly, they guided the interventions that helped each person grow. What both cases show is that motivation can be rebuilt when we address the underlying beliefs during behavior. When learners feel supported, when effort is valued over perfection, and when challenges are framed as opportunities rather than threats, confidence begins to grow. And as confidence grows, motivation follows. Ultimately, these experiences taught me that change doesn't come from forcing effort, it comes from reshaping beliefs, creating safety, and celebrating progress. With intentional guidance and the right support, learners who feel stuck can become self-driven, confident, and engaged. That is the power of understanding motivation. These are the primary sources that inform both the theoretical explanations and interventions discussed in this presentation. Ames, Dweck, and Weiner provided the foundational research behind goal orientation theory and causal attribution theory. Their work guided my understanding of Kay and James's motivational patterns. Thank you for listening.